Ladies and gentlemen, I have bad news. Our national infrastructure has been captured by pagan witchcraft. Go on, you all know it, don't you? We conquered typhoid, we invented jet planes, we went to the moon, and then we let freeloading parasites turn science into a group hug form of neolithic sorcery. It's bad, it really is. I mean, 5,000 years ago, tribal shamans said, I can stop the storms. Give me your goats and your girls, and I will fix the weather. So what are the guys saying now? They got lab coats on, but it's the same message. Give me your ARC grants and I can stop the storms. I know how to do this. Trust me. And what are they saying? We can save the world from the 6th mass extinction if you just ride a bicycle. On your bike. To stop floods, change your light globes. To end droughts, eat crickets. We can hold back the tide if you just use cloth shopping bags. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, this is pagan witchcraft. So, and think about what a bad deal we're getting in all of this. For our electricity grid, the cost of $1.5 trillion, the seers of 2024, they're not even stopping bad weather today. They're only promising to stop it for our grandchildren, 100 years from now. And remember, these are the grandchildren we're not supposed to have, because you're not supposed to have children because they're bad for your carbon footprint. Who exactly are we saving the world for? Just the spotted quolls or us in our nursing homes at 90? I don't know. Now, to get into the details and how much can we do on our national grid? But we are riding the express train to the Renewable faraway tree. We're aiming for 82% glorious renewables by 2030. Currently, we're 60% coal-powered. The task is ridiculously, obscenely absurd. And we all know it. They know it, we know it, they know we know it, and we know they know it, and yet we continue on. Everyone knows this can't possibly happen, and it won't work. And I think they only installed 2 new wind projects in the last quarter that anyone was counting. But in order to get to this mythical land, the faraway tree, we are supposed to install 22,000 solar panels a day and build a wind turbine, more than one every day, between now and 2030, not to mention building 10,000 kilometres of transmission lines. And by 2050, that's going to be 28,000 kilometres of transmission lines. Like, you know, don't we love transmission lines? It's all for the environment. So it is a pretty strange world we're living in. Now, yes, just to show you how bad it is, at the current situation, the current state of madness, one large cement maker is shutting down most days because of spike prices in electricity. So here in Renewable's world, it's cheaper to let 5,500 workers sit around and twiddle their thumbs than pay the electricity bill for 30 minutes at peak hour. This is not the way to run a country. And Queensland, this is why I've drawn that picture, Queensland has reached into the homes of people and turned off their air conditioners 6 times in the months leading up to New Year. Yes, you will own nothing and be hot and bothered. That's what they told us. They thought it was happy. Yes, the $400 cashback for something called, wait for it, the Peak Smart Air Conditioning Demand Management Scheme. And that's where you get a $400 discount off your overpriced inflated air conditioner in order that the government will turn it off to save them from the collapse of the grid on the hottest days of the year when you wish you had air conditioning. Now, and this is so dark and so mean, so obviously poor people will be taking that $400 riffraff, that $400 gift, supposedly, for their cheaper air conditioner. Rich people won't be doing that. So rich people will have air conditioners at work, and the second class poor citizens will get ones that only work on medium warm days of the year. The users will not be told when the government is switching off their air conditioning. But the government knows what they're doing because it's sending a message to their installers just in case they ring up and say, my air conditioner's broken, can you fix it? How sinister is that? So the Queensland government will tell the people who installed the air conditioners that they've switched it off for the moment. So in case you do notice, and they said you won't notice when we switch off your air conditioner, but just in case you do, they're telling the installers, so when you ring up, the installer can say, no, the air conditioner's working fine. Well, yeah, madness. I mean, Orwell couldn't have made this stuff up. Now, to get down to some of the nitty-gritty, yeah, there's our 22,000 solar panels and one wind turbine every day for a few months. This is the vision of Environment Australia, right? What we're supposed to be aiming for here. Yes, the $1.5 trillion white elephant Rolls-Royce grid that goes nowhere and does nothing. And we are the renewable crash test dummies of the world. There are not enough metals on Earth to do what they're trying to do in terms of a global thing. For lithium, the calculation is we will need, for the first generation of renewables, we will need 944 million tonnes of lithium. Now, current global production of all the world's mines of lithium is 0.1 megatonne a year. So we're talking 9,900 years to dig up the lithium to get us through the first 25 years of the renewable energy transition. Now, I've got to admit, to be fair, the lithium mines are, they're new. We have quadrupled production in the last 10 years because no one really needed lithium 10 years ago. So we will get better at lithium and that number will come down. But think about the situation for copper, and this is a giant copper mine in New Mexico, just for, eye candy. But copper, they're saying we will need 4.6 billion tonnes of copper for the next 25 years, for the next generation. The production currently per year around the whole world is 24 million tonnes a year. So that's only 200 years of production of copper we need in the next 25 years to make this work. But just to explain why that is so hard, we've been mining copper for a long time. We're not going to suddenly discover new and easy deposits of copper we can ramp production up. To put this in perspective, the first copper mines apparently were about the 4th millennium BC. There's 6,000 years of copper that humans have been digging it up. So the grades are steadily declining on our copper. We aren't going to suddenly miraculously find enough copper to do this transition. We also need cobalt, vanadium, germanium, nickel. China has most of them except for child slaves who dig out the cobalt in the Congo. Yes, another great green moral principle, isn't it? So what we're doing at the moment, most people don't realise, is actually a transition to fossil fuels. We are still transitioning to fossil fuels. 82% of the global energy use is from fossil fuels even today after spending billions of dollars installing thousands of wind turbines, etc. 82% is from fossil fuels. Wind and solar make up 6% of global energy use. And the weirdest thing about this, you look at the solar, wind and thermal, that's the black line at the top there. In other words, tiny. Even though we're installing them faster than ever in the last 10 years, we're still not keeping up with the growth in electricity demand around the world. It's that crazy. So here's how they phrase it, the masters of wordsmithing that they are. Renewables, excluding hydro, met 84% of net electricity demand growth. Note the word growth in 2022. That tells you they don't even keep up with the new electricity that we needed. They're not even growing as fast as our electricity grid is. We've got no chance of doing this transition. Of course, that was never the point. The point was always about control and money. So here's the Australian electricity grid. It's like 40,000 kilometres of transmission lines. Notice, so this is a big, oops, my laser pointer. On this side is the big national grid that stretches from Hobart all the way up to Cairns. Now that is huge, and it runs all on the same frequency. It's all, you know, it's all 50 hertz, continuous from top to bottom, dancing to the exact same tune 50 times a second. It's just a miracle that it runs, really. Miracle, I haven't screwed it up completely yet. But look at all these other little grids all over Australia and on the islands, Flinders Island, King Island, all those other little microgrids are the perfect case study for renewables. Because if renewables was going to work, that's where they'd work, right? So look at Onslow, for example, a WA town in the Pilbara. The ABC was so excited to tell us, you know, the best thing about a blackout is that the ABC stops working. Thank you. I phrased that incorrectly. The best thing about a blackout is the ABC stops feeding us misinformation. In Onslow, so it's a global megapolis there of 847 people in Onslow. The ABC got very excited a couple of years ago announcing that it had hit like 100% renewables, not for a week, not for a day, for 80 minutes. Yeah, exactly. It's what they don't tell you. So, as I said on my blog, it's only 520,000 minutes short of 1 year. So this is 850 people living in one of the sunniest zones of the world, and they were excited because they got 100% renewables for like an hour and a half. So to do this, they had 700 kilowatts of solar PV, 600 kilowatts of solar grid, a megawatt battery, and a gas plant, because of course they need the gas plant, don't they? And the irony being, of course, that Onslow's right on the edge of our northwest shelf, with it's just buckets of gas. Then there's Flinders Island. Now, if there's ever a heaven for renewables, it would be Flinders Island, so in the Bass Strait, north of Tasmania. So it's in the roaring 40s, solid wind all year. It's got some solar and it's got potentially tidal, where everybody loves to talk about tidal. No one seems to get it to work. It's got no competition from cheap coal or gas. They just cannot get mainland electricity. So you would think with expensive diesel energy there, they've got to boat the diesel in, with expensive energy, it would be a snap for it to be 100% renewables and cheap, right? Well, it isn't. So they're still running 40% diesel. So Flinders Island is as good as it gets, 60% renewables, and they've spent millions to get that to be 60% renewables. I wish I had the sums on what it costs per person to see whether it makes sense. King Island, again, they brag about it. It's now 65% renewables. That seems to be the limit. And we can double and we can triple the wind and the solar power on these islands, and it isn't going to get much better than 65, because when the wind is not shining, when the wind, up late last night. When the wind is not blowing on one half of Flinders Island, it's not blowing on the other half either. And the same for the sun. So you can double the amount of renewables you got. You don't get more energy when you need it, which means you're still left about 35 or 40% diesel. All right. Now, in fact, so think about this. We're converting the whole country to net zero, supposedly. We can't even get it to work on an island or a single town in Australia. Not one single town as a case study. Here's how we're going to do the whole nation, you know. Forget doing a test case, like I said, renewable crash test dummies. This is a farmer in Victoria, and he reported to us last year, he said, we can't even do one farm easily on renewables. He tried to go off-grid. He was a doctor who didn't want to get the latest medical experiment, so he quit and became a farmer. Spent $160,000. He's got 2 3-bedroom houses on this farm, 30 solar panels, a kilowatt of wind, 30 lead-acid batteries, bottled gas for the stove, 6 kilovolt petrol generator, which he still has to use 60 to 100 hours a year, and he still has to cut 200 kilos of wood every week in winter. Yeah, his message to the world was, And he went off grid because he was a long way from the mainland supply. And he said the modern society can't function on renewables. It's not possible. You think how much money he had to spend to get 2 houses to go, not even net zero, just remotely close to it. So they are vandals, ladies and gentlemen. All those extra power lines they want to put in, ugly monstrosities that blow down in the wind and wreck the grid, and yet we need more of them. They tell us the weather's going to get worse, but we need to put more of these in. And all the grids, they've got dreams of planning. The only reason for these grids is so that someone can sell the land to make solar and wind profitable. The entire point of these is for the renewables extensions, but they don't charge them to the companies that are selling renewables. They charge them to us. So it comes on our electricity bill, but nobody labels it subsidy for wind and solar. It's not called that. They lie about everything. And yes, one of my favourite farmers' responses to that. And another farmer's response to that. So, as I said, pagan witchcraft, the temple of, worshipping, and of course, nobody really believes these things are going to stop floods in Bangladesh or slow down cyclones for our grandchildren. It's all a joke. And probably I should finish up soon. Someone might want to give me a flag if I'm going over time here, because I could just go on, carried away here forever. But ladies and gentlemen, see, you look at that and you might think that that is an industrial electrical generator that's meant to, boil your coffee and give you toast every morning, keep you warm and all that kind of stuff. But it isn't. Really, it is not an industrial electrical generation plant. Not first. Its first priority is global climate control. This is what we're doing to our national grid. We are spending billions of dollars to convert it into a giant weather control machinery. We want our grid to give us better weather, and this is a bad weather controller. It produces all bad weather. Floods and droughts and bushfires. They're all caused by this sort of energy. If you want nice weather, you need to get your slides in the right order, and pictures of wind and pictures of solar, because they make nice weather. So that's the kind of weather controllers we're looking at. Pagan witchcraft. Did you have 5 minutes? Thanks, Topher. So they're vandals in the market. This, actually, I'm going to get serious for a second. This is really sad. This is a graph that starts off way over here in 1955, going through to about 2018. That is 2 generations of Australians who paid off our electricity grid. And the red line, is the cost of electricity. For 2 generations, we got better electricity, cheaper electricity. The engineers made those machines work better. And then Kevin Rudd had this idea in 2007. See the green stuff? That's the renewable stuff coming in. Oh, gee, there's a coincidence there. More renewables meant higher prices. We undid 2 generations of work. Now, notice also in the 1970s, they were still bringing electricity prices down. Remember the inflation. Despite the inflation, they brought electricity prices down by just efficiency gains, by making these machines better, smoother, faster, and more efficient. So we are just basically wrecking 60 years of great work. We're blowing it up. That's what they do with the old coal plants. Other countries are not doing that. France and Germany saved, and England saved some of their old coal plants, and they needed it when they had trouble in Russia. Now, they tell us it's the cheapest, most reliable energy system over and over. And yes, as Topher pointed out, the coal is free underground, the wind is free in the sky, but the money is to collect it, isn't it? What they don't talk about is the total system cost. And the big deal with wind and solar, because they're intermittent and going up and down, you've got to have a backup. Now, the backup works all the time. So the truth is, you don't have to have the intermittent one. You just need the backup. All of the intermittent stuff is just the extra weather changing, nice controller you've got in the background there. I've seen studies where they ran just the gas plant on its own, and then they ran the gas plant with the wind to see what the prices were, and the total cost went up $30 a megawatt hour when you added a wind turbine setup to the gas plant. In other words, the wind turbine made the gas more expensive. And it's kind of obvious when you think about it because, and solar's the same, they're vandals on an electricity grid designed to run 24 hours a day. When you've got a grid that works, running 24 hours a day, and then you throw energy into the middle of it like solar or randomly like wind, all those coal plants, those guys, they've still got the same cost for capital, their insurance, their staff costs, all of those other costs. Only their fuel goes down a little bit, but all those other costs are still sitting there. So at lunchtime, all the guys are just twiddling their thumbs, watching YouTube videos or something, but the money's still got to come from somewhere. So at dinner time, the costs just go right up, don't they? So you might get negative, cheap, free, electricity at lunchtime with solar, which is all subsidised up the kazoo despite being free for some reason. And then at dinner, your electricity gets even more expensive than it was before. So the total system cost is what is destroying us. And that is so obvious, isn't it? I mean, we've seen that in the graphs of the electricity costs across every state on the East Coast. It's come back down a little bit in the last quarter, which is not shown on the graph. But you can see the trend here for the last 20 years is just up, up and away. The more renewables we get, the more expensive our electricity becomes. And yet they tell us it's cheap. And when we look at every country on earth that's put renewables in, there isn't one that got cheaper. So this is a graph, dots of different countries, graphed against what the percentage of renewables is that they've put in there. And this is specifically wind and solar renewables, not the hydro. But when you look at the wind and solar, Germany, Netherlands, UK, Spain, it's all expensive and we're headed there. And countries that have got good old-fashioned reliable power have cheap electricity still. And in Victoria, looking at the costs, this is a weird graph. This is every quarter going back for years, and it shows the prices. Now, they're hard to see because they're written in on the bars. Black coal in the last quarter of 2023, there was second quarter, sorry, it was $100 a megawatt. Brown coal was $15 a megawatt. Remember, our electricity bills were through the roof. Brown coal was still winning bids on our national market last year during disaster. It was still winning bids at $15 a megawatt hour, and I'll convert that for you. That is 1.5 cents a kilowatt hour. That's electricity being made wholesale for 1.5 cents a kilowatt hour even today. We have 300 years of coal underground. We are insane for not burning all of it while we still can, because one day there'll be nuclear and everyone will be doing fusion and the coal won't be worth much. But, you know, burn it now, because not only will you feed the plants, but you give everyone cheap electricity. We could afford to manufacture things in Australia again. I graphed that there. Sorry, there's so much information on these graphs. The brown coal is the little line at the front. It has been the cheapest source of electricity in Australia, they don't mention, for quarter after quarter after quarter. In the background there, we've got the black coal. You can see that went up with the war. The hydro, that also went up with the war. And there's battery power. It doesn't matter which one we graph. Brown coal blitzes the field when it comes to cheap electricity, and they don't tell you. Now, Topher, on that note, I should probably finish up, but obviously the future, just give me 30 seconds more. Uranium, ladies and gentlemen, you know Australia has more uranium than anywhere in the world. Oh, sorry, that graph's just a bit, I'll show you. Yes, one country has the largest uranium resources in the world and no nuclear power. Ladies and gentlemen, Belarus has a nuclear power plant. Armenia has a nuclear power plant. Czechoslovakia has 6. Hungary has 4. We have none. We are just kind of mental about this. We banned them before we even built one, I mean, apart from Lucas Heights. So, yeah, if we get nuclear subs, maybe we'll be lucky enough to plug them in, we'll get nuclear power. Park them in port. So obviously, you know, look, and here's the joke of it. When they say, oh, nuclear's too slow, you can't build nuclear, in about 1974, France built, it was 56 nuclear plants in 15 years. And in fact, most of them were built in 5 to 7 years. So the joke of it is when they say we can't solve climate change except with wind and solar, there's a low emissions, a zero emissions energy source that's 50 years old with a proven track record, and we could phone up President Macron and we could say, hey, would you mind lending us a 1972 MESMA plan so we could just copy your nuclear power plants, please? We know they work, and we could do that and solve climate change like that. But they don't do that because they don't want to solve climate change. Then there won't be a crisis because you need the crisis. So, ladies and gentlemen, you know they don't care about CO2 because if they did care about CO2, we would have built nuclear plants 15 years ago. Kevin Rudd would have said, build the nuclear plants, wouldn't he? It isn't about CO2 and it isn't about science and it never has been. Thank you.